Imagine, if you will, that a new restaurant opens up in town. You're a little skeptical. In fact, you know the owners of the place don't have the best track record, but you're a fan of the chef and you want to give it a shot. You check the place out and you're served an absolutely delicious meal. Not one that completely reinvents the wheel, but rather a classic executed to near perfection. I'm talking juicy grilled asparagus, the creamiest of mashed potatoes, gooey mac and cheese, a tall glass of red wine, and a medium rare steak cooked just the way it should be. Now imagine, after that meal, the restaurant closes its doors for 3 years, and as good as it was, you start to forget about it over time. Lots of other restaurants have captured your interest since, and that one is now nothing more than a distant memory. Except wait, it's back. It's reopened its doors once more. Suddenly, you recall your dining experience there as if it was yesterday. That meal really was something else, and you can't wait to get a table and experience whatever fresh course the chef has in store this time around. But once you're finally sitting there, fork in hand, a smile of anticipation wrapped around your face, the server brings you a dish that's anything but what you wanted. It's the same, but worse. Cold and chewy asparagus, dry mashed potatoes, stale mac and cheese, a half drunk Four Loco, and the steak is really the only thing that's halfway edible. I think you get what I'm going for here. Having finally finished the meal that is Peacemaker Season 2, I can safely declare it as wholly unsatisfying, approaching one of the absolute worst sins any form of entertainment can commit: wasting my fucking time. Let's start with the good, though, especially because I know the more I talk about this, the more frustrated I'm going to become. The show is called Peacemaker, and there's a large focus on the character this time around, more so than ever before. The story revolves around him being depressed after being rejected by both the Justice Gang at a chance to be a proper superhero, and his love interest Harcourt for a chance at finding happiness. This leads to his use of an alien portal left behind by his late father, using the doorway to a hub world between dimensions to seek out an alternate reality where the grass is greener. This isn't the worst idea for a character arc. Sure, it's kinda similar to a recent superhero outing, but that's okay. Peacemaker has his own unique drama going on, having killed both his own brother and father in his universe, now reunited with the two on an alternate Earth. This is by far the most interesting element of this season's storyline. By this point, we've seen the character go through quite a few traumatic events, and even still, we know that his heart is in the right place. All he wants is to protect people, especially those he loves, and he no longer feels like he's the right man for the job, at least not in his reality. But now this new place offers him the opportunity to have everything he ever wanted, including a more zen and affectionate version of Harcourt. The prospect of leaving everything behind for a better universe is understandably seductive, and it's cathartic for both the character and the audience to see Peacemaker experience what he never had, especially with his brother, who has made it to adulthood this time around. The worst day of Christopher Smith's life is easily the day he killed his brother. Alternatively, experiencing a reality in which he's still alive is naturally the most enticing possibility, and it's difficult to argue with Peacemaker's decision to want to stay. Well, that is until he finds out more about the alternate Earth, but we'll get there. Before discussing where the story eventually goes, it's time for me to rant about the fundamental problem with this entire season. Nothing fucking happens. Yes, there's the alternate dimension premise that I just described for Peacemaker to explore, but outside of that, there's little to no story progression for our entire cast of characters. I get it, the show is called Peacemaker, but that doesn't mean we should just forget about everybody else. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happens. At the end of the last season, Adebayo dropped a major bombshell by exposing her mother as a calculated sociopath in charge of black ops missions that have almost gotten her, her friends, and the suicide squads of the past killed. You would think that cliffhanger ending would play a major role in her storyline this time around, and you would be completely wrong. Instead, her arc, if you can even call it that, starts off with her wanting to start her own private investigator business, but that idea is all but forgotten as she drifts from scene to scene, emotionally babysitting everybody around her. She's basically just around to tell her friends to get their shit together. A far cry from the scared newbie turned badass agent we got in the first season. Speaking of badass agents, Harcourt has a career based storyline as well, having been ousted from working for any government agency as punishment for Adebayo's actions. She spends the entire season bitching about not being able to find work and getting into bar fights. I'm not kidding. That's all she does, other than a completely contrived drama between her and Chris. There's a will they, won't they aspect to the season that is completely insufferable, as the two don't have the chemistry that the show keeps insisting that they do, making me want to see both of them get over the other rather than finally get together by the end. The next character and storyline we have is Economos' continued work for Argus, the government agency in charge of dealing with metahuman incidents. Once again, we're met with a bunch of wheel spinning, treated to episode upon episode of John trying to help Peacemaker stay one step ahead of the agents that are after him in his portal. I will say that Steve Agee is probably the funniest actor on the show this year, and these sequences provide the most laughs, especially now that he has a cool, sarcastic superior in Tim Meadows to go back and forth with. Economos has never been the deepest or most complex character, and this use of him is fine. It's just more of a missed opportunity that his character wasn't given more to do or expanded upon. Which leads me to another character that was completely fucked this time around, Vigilante. In the first season, he was introduced as this lovable psycho whose ideology lined up very close to Peacemaker's, sort of a peace at all costs kind of thing. He treated murderers and heroin dealers with the same violent justice as graffiti vandals. Not only was the character hilarious, but he was a total badass, making him more than just a hero worshipping sidekick, but a hero in his own right. Outside of one significant kill he makes near the end, he spends the majority of this season relegated to making the same tired joke of asking everyone if they want to hear random animal facts. I'd be lying if I said he never made me laugh, but he's also significantly more annoying now. And it pains me to say that because he was my favorite character from the show's original run. The best sequence he gets is when he visits his home in the parallel dimension, actively seeking out his alternate self. Not only is his reaction to the alternate reality's differences funny, it offers a nice segue into the big reveal of the season, in stark contrast to both his and Peacemaker's initial joy while exploring. Alright, let's talk about what that reveal is. After Peacemaker decides to officially abandon his reality for the new family and love interest the other has to offer, his friends follow after him on a mission to convince him to return. Things get dangerous and difficult, particularly for Adebayo, when they quickly realize that this alternate dimension is one in which the Nazis succeeded in world domination and all minorities have been captured and sent off to prison camps. It's shocking at first, especially with how stupid it makes Peacemaker look that he didn't realize this. But after a brief chase with Adebayo and a scene that gives this one from The Last of Us 2 show a run for its money in terms of memeable cringe, the show doesn't really do anything with the premise it spent all this time building towards. Instead, the T-1000 delivers a decent monologue about doing your best in a dark world, before all of our characters are reunited and chaotic violence ensues. This would be a good time to mention that the action sequences aren't particularly anything to write home about either. There's a decent bar fight with Harcourt at the beginning of the season, and a pretty cool sequence where Peacemaker takes down a domestic terrorist at one point. But outside of that, nothing was particularly memorable in terms of choreography, cinematography, or really even the dramatic stakes of what was happening and who was fighting who. I mean, you've got an action scene with two vigilantes, and the fighting still isn't interesting. John Cena does have a breakdown after the fallout of the final battle that really showcases how far he's come as an actor, and I was genuinely impressed with the amount of emotion he was able to elicit from me. It just sucks because even this moment is undercut by the feeling of a lost opportunity. He's breaking down over the loss of his brother, who we now know is a confirmed Nazi, but it would have been far more dramatically interesting if Chris had seen that. Again, the dark turn the world of the show takes is so late that the Peacemaker character never really has to take in the full weight of what this all means. Imagine how much more heartbreaking it would have been had Peacemaker actually witnessed this new brother, or alternate Harcourt for that matter, engaged in reprehensible behavior and been forced to decide if he'll defend them or not from his friends. This entire season is fucking up the show don't tell rule, practically screaming in my face what it's about without actually giving the characters any sequences of organic development. We get things like Rick Flag Sr. becoming a comically evil douchebag on a dime, teaming up with Lex Luthor and sacrificing wave after wave of his men in search of a prison planet, or a cyborg girl in Tim Meadows starting a business with the rest of the 11th Street kids, seemingly for no reason other than the script demands it. The characters and their respective actors do still have some level of charm and chemistry for the most part, but that's not enough to carry a storyline this bare bones. I'm struggling to understand how a fumble like this was even possible, because I've really liked James Gunn's previous work, particularly with his eccentric team of loners forced to come together type projects, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe he's done this kind of thing one too many times now, and it's time to move on to a different kind of story. Something more personal, with a smaller roster of characters. I doubt that will be the case now that his DCU is in full effect. So here's hoping the Superman sequel will be better than Peacemaker's. Peacemaker Season 2 gets a Christopher Smith minus. Oh, and Superman was decent. Better than this. Baravia minus. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like, throw down a comment below, and subscribe to see more.